So who am I? I'm a developer at the AGFA healthcare company. It's in Vienna. You might know AGFA from the film stocks they were producing back in the day. They were very cool, so they are not doing it anymore. But still, the healthcare division is alive, and we are developing applications for doctors, for radiologists, cardiologists, and so on and so on. You good?
Yep, we're good.
All right. So, since the time is limited, there's going to be 3 hacks for today. And as another disclaimer, these hacks are nothing that you should follow. These are absolute terrible examples. Every single hack that I will show have a solution in the Angular framework. It's nothing that you have to do. It's just we were short on time, everything was on fire, and so on and so on. We had to come up with some very stupid things, and this is what I want to show. But these are not solutions that you should look forward to. Just as a disclaimer. So we will talk about lifecycle hooks for services, because there isn't too many, just the engine destroy. We're gonna talk about injection token factory with dependency injection. So whenever you are creating an injection token, you have to manually provide all the dependencies, but you can actually use a hack to circumvent this. And the forward for child pattern is not anymore available for standalone components because it's returning a module with providers, but we will see a hack for that too. So let's start with the custom lifecycle hooks for services. This is a, you know, components have a lot of lifecycle hooks. NG on init, NG after init, NG on destroy. We all use it, right? It's a common sense. But do we have anything for services? Do you know any lifecycle hook? Sorry? NG on destroy, right? NG on destroy is available for services, but there are some caveats. Because even though you can implement NG on destroy and use it, it's not necessary that your service is going to be anytime soon destroyed, right? So for example, let's take this example. You have a service, which is, as you can see here, it's not provided in the root. And then you have a service, which is provided in the root. They are extremely useful services because they are console logging A or B, right? This is what every customer needs. And then you have a component. In the component, you actually provide your service, right? So even though it's not provided in the root, it's provided in the component. And then you inject the service and then do whatever you want, right? But then afterwards, suddenly a meteor strikes your component and dinosaurs. Everybody is yelling and dying. And then in that particular case, when the component is destroyed, what is going to be printed and in what order? Does anybody have a guess? Yes?
Only A.
Only A? Yes. Well, actually, none of them. None. So now the question is why nothing is going to get printed. The reason is even though I provided the service here, but when you are defining something in the providers array, you are actually just providing a receipt for Angular, what to do whenever somebody is injecting that class. And whenever you have an injection for that class, it's instantiating it. But if you're not instantiating it, the NG on destroy will never get called, right? So that's something that you have to take care. And if it's provided in the root, or if it's provided in a module or in the platform, then it's never going to get destroyed. The NG on destroy will never get called. So this is why nothing is printed out, even though the component was destroyed by a meteorite. So how you should tackle life cycles in services, because there are solutions actually. Well, and why would you like to have life cycles in services, right? Because you are doing something wrong. Because you are putting a lot of subscription into services, you are putting a bunch of code in services that needs setup and needs tear down. Well, that's the first thing. You shouldn't do it. So the solution for it is just a technical adapt and refactor, right? To move the subscriptions to components, use the async pipe to subscribe to stuff, extract the state to signal store so there is no state anymore in your services and so on. This is the good solution, right? You can also provide your service in a component. So in a component, whenever you use a service, you can use the constructor for basically the initialization and the ng on destroy whenever the component is destroyed. And you can also refuse to collaborate with the framework and have something together which is avoiding any sort of long-term solution, right? So we're gonna only focus on the fourth today, nothing else. So why I went to the fourth way? Why was it necessary for us? It wasn't. It was just there was so much work to do it correctly, and we needed to do it very fast for a customer because the application was misbehaving due to a lot of memory leaks and so on and so on. It was a time to hack something in 2 days instead of properly doing it. But even though I will show you the hack how to resolve this issue, this is already gone from our code. So it's no longer there. We finally had the time to do it nicely. But how to do it? And I have another example. So you have this component, basically an orchestrator to have everything in the constructor to be injected. We are still kind of have this constructor-based injection almost everywhere. And then whenever you have the ng init or ng destroy, you are calling the init function and the destroy functions on services, right? I see this pattern in many cases. People are doing it actually a lot of time. It's kind of one way to do it, right? This is how it was before in our code. And then I was thinking like, okay, you had this ng init and ng destroy. It would be so cool to have something similar in services, right? So I don't have to inject all my services and call init and destroy whenever something is, to have the same functionality, right? You can also have a service for it, right? You can have, for example, in this particular case, you have the services, and then you are binding the same thing to the WebSocket. For example, when you have a WebSocket open and close, you are calling the init on all the services, and whenever the WebSocket connection is lost, basically you lost the session, you call the destroy on all of these services. This is how it was before in our application. And then I was thinking that maybe this on session start and on session end, which is basically the orchestrator of our lifecycle for our services, it would be so cool to have the same thing with just a session-aware lifecycle and a session-aware interface that the service is just implementing, and then you are implementing the on-session start and your on-session end. You put all those very bad patterns that you are already using in your code, for example, initializing subscriptions, obviously, in services. No, shouldn't. And then unsubscribing, and so on, and so on, and so on. So it would look like something like this. You have a service implements a session where you have the on-session start, on-session end. That's all. Like with the ng init, right? ng destroy. It would be so cool to have something like that. So let's talk about how the injector creates the services, because it's going to be important to understand the requirements and also the where and how to hook life cycles into it. So you have the injector, and then if it's an environment injector, it's actually an R3 injector. It's called like that. And there are two things that is not exposed in the main injector interface, but it's going to be important for us. In an R3 injector, there is the records. The records actually is like a map of all the receipts, what to do with an injection token, what to do with them, and then also it's a record for the instances which is relating to the provider token. And then there is the hydrate function, which has nothing to do with Angular's hydration mechanism. This is just the hydration of the service or any sort of provided class value or whatever. So hydrate is called whenever there is an inject called on one of your service or one of your provided tokens. So instead of doing the one by one, have to implement what was the caveats, details, and so on, let's just jump to the solution directly. So a solution for us was something like that. It's a bit different, but it's kind of has the concept in it. So there is the session start, session end. These functions can be called by whatever. It doesn't matter. These can be called by the WebSocket. These can be called by a component. It doesn't really matter. But the whole thing is that it's getting the session of your services and then looping through and calling the session start. And on the session end, it's doing the same, just calling the session end. But how to get the session of your services? You actually get the injector. you get the records from the injector, and then you loop through on all the records to see if there is an instance already, and if there is an instance already injected, then you check if this is session aware, and if it's a session aware, then you are calling the on session start or the on session end, right? To check if something is session aware, it's just checking if it has the on session start and on session end property, basically as a JavaScript object. So that's one part, right? But the problem with that is that it only works for the already instantiated services. So what about services that you are trying to lazily load, right? Because we don't want to mess up the lazy loading functionalities of a root injected service, right? You would still want to have tree shakeable services. So for that, there is another mechanism in this whole system, which actually, again, gets the injector and is doing the worst thing humanly possible, monkey patching the hibernate function of the injector itself. And what it's doing, it's checking what is the record value currently on the injector, and then afterwards calls the original hydrate function from the injector, and then checks if the record value is the same or it's different than the hydrated class. Because if so, that it means that this is now got instantiated, and we are we are basically in the on session start. So the session has already started. So basically, it checks if the newly instantiated service is also a session aware one, and if it is, then it's calling the on session start. So what we have now is that we have basically a custom lifecycle, the on session start and on session end for services. You can just implement and it works out of the box. You don't have to inject them, import them, and whatever, and do all this kind of stuff. No need to call init on destroy, that's the whole thing of it. It's basically just out of the box works. You don't need to inject anymore the services, right? But it's not true. So you still need to inject them, right? Because all the injection will essentially create an instance for it. But we can have a hack for that. So how about making Angular inject the services without actually injecting them anywhere? Where you can create an initializer. This is basically an injection token. It doesn't do anything. It's just a function calling void, but it actually doesn't do anything. It doesn't matter. It can be undefined. It's provided in the root, but that's also not that interesting. So you can actually create a provider entry which is providing this initializer. It's a multi-provide, so you can provide as many as you would like. And it's basically just a factory, and the factory is depending on your service that you're not injecting anywhere. Which means that whenever the eager initializer is injected or used anywhere in your application, it will try to resolve the factory function, and the factory function will reference the dependency, and that dependency is your non-injected service, so it will create the non-injected service. So you can create services without injection. Would you use it? No, I don't know. It was just something that was funny, so I also did it, and I had like 2 hours to do it. So that's something that you can still do. Stupid hack, why would you do that? You can. So, next topic. Injection token with factory, so injection token factory with automated dependency injection. So why is it, what is the actual problem? What did I want it to solve, right? That's the first question. And actually it's something beforehand. So providing injection tokens, right? How you can provide injection tokens? You can use a modules or the application bootstrap or a components providers array. There you can define the use class, use value, use existing, or use factory functions, and then you have an injection token provided, right? You can also create like a basic factory function that whenever you're not providing it anywhere, it will essentially call the factory function on your injection token. In this factory function, there is a very strong or very, very good pattern that I see everywhere, that everybody is using the inject because it's available there, and based on that condition or service which is coming from the inject, you can actually define 2 or multiple different kind of services that you want to use based on some sort of condition. So you can basically create a factory function which on the runtime basically decides, so whenever you are inject, decides which service should be essentially used in your application. This is usually used for having an environment configuration, which is production or development, and you are using the development version of your service because you don't want to have whatever. That's usually the use case why it's being used. What is the problem with that? For me, the problem with that is that whenever you change something on service A or service B and you're still using the constructor-based injection, then you have to manually, again, go back to your factory function and change it, and you have to use the inject again, you have to have another dependency, and then you are passing that dependency to the constructor, and so on and so on and so on. It's manual labor. So whenever you're changing something, it's just you have to manually update something, and you have thousands of these tokens, and then you change again tens of dependencies, and then you manually have to update all these tokens just to make it compile. Why isn't it automatically done, or how to do it automatically, right? So what we want to avoid is the manual labor, as I told you. Manually provide things, we don't want to do that, and we want to have something which is reusable. So I don't want to create a solution for this problem for every single use case. I want to have a solution for every single use case in our code. So I don't want to manually update dependencies anymore in factory functions. Reusing the same name, quickly jumping to the solution. So what I created is this token generator. This token generator essentially is returning an injection token for you. It has the token name and the service and the provided in as options. So whenever you create the injection token, it's just forwarding all this kind of stuff. The weird thing is starting here, right? That in the factory function, you have a module. A newly defined and created module. Why would you do that? Because, not yet there, but because the modules or components or whatever, whenever you provide something in the provider's array, and then whenever you are using then the inject function, it automatically restores all the dependencies, right? That's what it does. So if you want to avoid, for example, manually doing all this kind of stuff, how about creating a proxy module, which is just here defined in this factory function? You have a provider's array, and in this provider's array, you actually pass your service, which looks like this if you think about it, that it's going to be your service, which means that it's just a shorthand for the use class of your service. The use class is telling Angular that, yes, I want to have a new instance of it, and then you have to deal with all the dependencies and dependency injection. So afterwards, you are creating your proxy module. You are actually using the create ng module function, which is coming from the Angular core. And then you are using the injector, which is available at that time when you are trying to first inject this token generator. And then you are getting the instance from the proxy module's injector. And then afterwards, you destroy the proxy module. You can destroy the proxy module because the injector that you are using is actually shared among all these modules. So therefore, your service will not be destroyed. You can destroy the proxy module that you just created. And here you have it. And this resolves every single dependency. You don't have to manually update anymore anything in your injection tokens. And then there is another thing which is provided in any, I think in Angular 20 or 21, it's gone as far as I know, so it's not interesting anymore. This is interesting if provided in any means that it can be also provided into a component, right? Or anywhere, basically. And if it's a component, then the component has the lifecycle, and in the ng on destroy, you should clear up also this instance just to make sure that you're not introducing any sort of memory leak. So basically that's it. You have your injection token generator. And this token generator can be used like this. It's very easy. You just call the token generator, you pass the type, and then you pass the token name and the service, and then in your component, you're just using the inject your service and whatever. And that just works out of the box. And then, yeah, this one is a hack. It's not necessary. it's not necessary anymore because you don't have to update manually the dependencies if you are not using constructor-based injection. So the solution is super easy actually in Angular. You just don't do that, and then you will not end up in this situation. But if you have thousands of services and then you are lazy, then you create some sort of stupid hack, and then that's all, and it's gonna work. But the next topic. So replacement for the for-root, for-child in standalone components. So it was a pattern, or maybe still a bit of a pattern in Angular, this for-root and for-child. You basically had a module, and then you were able to call these functions, and that function was returning a module with providers. And then you were able to have settings. You were able to have services instantiated only once to make sure that they are not multiplicated whenever you are importing multiple times the same module, and so on and so on. It was very useful back in the module time. Well, we still have modules because we have a huge legacy code, so I had to come up with a solution. But we are trying to move forward to standalone components, so there needed to be a solution. So this is an old example why it was useful before, right? You basically had your library, and then you had this with config or with whatever, where you can pass, for example, an environment, and then a definition for the environment, and in the providers array, you will be able to decide which service you would like to provide based on the environment, if it's a production or development. So it's kind of the same reason why I had to do it, like the earlier example. And of course, whenever you do this, because you have libraries and whatever, and in the libraries you cannot really access the environment reliably, so you are usually creating or like providing an injection token in the application root just to have this environment readily available wherever you want to inject the environment. And then in a standalone component, if you want to reuse the same thing, so if you want to use this with config pattern with your library module, then you will have this error, right? That the module with providers value is not good anymore, it's not accepted, and likely a result of module forward style code. Yes, exactly, this is what I wanted to have. And it says that you should actually define all this kind of stuff in the application bootstrap. But what is wrong with that is that I think if in the application bootstrap you are defining all this kind of stuff, that your application bootstrap, if you have like a huge enterprise application, it's going to be very big, very hard to maintain, very hard to understand what's going on there. And also in the beginning, you already compile every single thing just because you are mentioning it in the application bootstrap. It doesn't really provide you very well reshape in the future, so I didn't really like the solution that Angular provides. So the usual stuff, jumping to the same thing. So it's again the token generator. It's the same thing. This is actually available to do it with a little bit of modification. So we already saw this, right? So in this config-based token generator, it's basically almost the same as what we saw before, except that because we have a lot of like production and developer service to have a very small developer sandbox. I actually created this to have this distinction still readily available for standalone components. And in here, you actually have still the token name and your service, but you also have the other way, the developer version of the service, and then the rest is kind of the same. The difference is that you are providing both of them in the ng module, right? But this one is not that problematic, that providing it in application bootstrap, because this one is only running whenever you are injected first. So whenever you inject it first, you already want to have it. It doesn't matter anymore. It's properly lazy loading everything. So you are doing the same. You are creating the proxy module. You are using your two services, and based on the environment, if it's a production, it gets the production version of the service. If it's a developer, then it's injecting the developer service, and then destroying the module, right? So basically, you are not even instantiating the version that you are not even needing. It's not even there. It's nowhere. And then basically that's it. That's the same thing. You have your environment, and then you, with this method, or with this generator, you can use your services based on the environment. You can actually provide your service en route, but also provide another version of your service, and it's lazily evaluating whenever you're injecting it, and it's still on the route. So if you want to have two versions of the same, so an injection token defined, and two services provided by providing it to root, actually Angular will not allow you, right? This is not an option. And if you want to have it, this is the way to create an injection token, and then based on the whatever it's doing its thing. But if you do that, then you manually have to update the dependencies. But with this config-based token generator, you don't have to do it anymore. So this is, again, a stupid hack, but this one is, I'm sorry to say that this might be actually useful. It's still terrible. I'm pretty sure there are better solutions for it. And there are solutions for it, right? You can just provide your stuff in the application module, and then you don't have to write any sort of crap like that. But this one is almost useful. So this one is still in our code. Don't tell the concurrences that we are doing this, but this is still in our code, and it's working fine. So, yep, usage, basically the same. You have your generator, you provide, or like you put there the production and the dev service, but you know, these are just definitions, nothing else. And then you are using your service with the inject, and then basically that's it. And I was faster than expected, so we still have some time. But the whole thing is that these were the Angular hacks I had to do, so you don't have to. But since I thought it's going to take more time, it's just basically the part one, because I can actually talk like 8 hours about all this stupid crap that we did in our company. And we have actually still 10 minutes. If you want, I can still show you without the presentation some other stupid things that we did. Because, for example, this proxy module was also used somewhere else. Like, I created like a mocking solution for signal stores, and I used the same hack. This proxy module is dealing with all the dependencies, and you don't have to manually override them in a test and this kind of stuff, right? So for mocking, this is also very useful to create this proxy module and then just destroy it at the end. So that's it, yeah?
10 minutes, we have enough time, so you can show us a live coding session, how you come up with the hacks that you do. What's the thought process there? And, yeah.
No, man.
Experience. Come on. How drugs was.
All right. Thought processes is usually that we are developing something for like 2 years, like because we are developing applications for hospitals, and we have like a huge validation and everything. So we have a CI pipeline, but you develop something, and the first you see it on the customer is like it takes 2 years or so until it gets to the customer, right? So you're developing something for a very long time, and then the customer says that it's crap, and then you have like 2 weeks to fix everything. And this is when you don't want to do your 2-year-long technical debt. And then you just want to have something. So the thought process is time. It's usually that you don't want to lose a tender and this kind of stuff. But we have a very special industry, and I think this is why we are doing these scraps. But frankly, afterwards, they are all managed. So almost all. But most of them are tackled in a nice way. That's how Angular would like to have. Yes?
But have you considered using any of these approaches to make services really interchangeable, like interface-based interchangeability?
Yes.
So, but like on a nice way?
Yeah, actually.
It's an interface, and
yeah.
there's somewhere that this is the interface that I want to use.
Yeah. So this code is not what we have, right? This code is just an example, because it defines that you have to have a production and a developer service. So it's basically restraining your abilities to say what I want to have in general. So what is the condition based on the decision making at the end when what is injected and what not. So it doesn't look like this. It actually looks like you have functions that you are providing to this solution, and then you have an array of services, and then you have basically a function which tells the injector or tells this part, right, when it's checking what to do is based on the function that you are providing. So it's actually like more generic than this. So we have for a lot of use cases for this.
But can you make it in a way that the code is still beautiful, like use inject and then an interface, for example, and do this implicitly somewhere intercept the injector, basically? You know what I mean? You can always always create an injection token to represent the interface and interchange it in the injection token. But I think this is a lot. It's like boilerplate code you produce, right?
Yeah, I don't want to define all of them one by one, right? For every single use case, this is like generic solution for everything. Not this one, but I'm showing about what we have. So maybe I didn't misunderstood your question.
Sorry?
Maybe I misunderstood your question.
Yeah, like I would wish to do something like inject parenthesis and then user service, for example, and decide somewhere centrally which implementation of the user service is injected, and do this like without a function call to some like proxy service who does it, but they just have the code clean, inject parenthesis user service, and you do some magic that intercepts this injection.
I think it's kind of doing it. So at the end, this is how we use it, right? That you are just saying you are defining still this config-based token generator just once, right? And then afterwards, in your component or service, you are just using the injection token on the token itself. But it's not much of a difference than using the interface. Actually, you can't reference the interface in an inject, just an abstract class.
Okay, my wish was like to get rid of this export cons your service token and all this stuff. Just do this implicitly somewhere, because you have to do a lot.
I recommend still using injection tokens because you can create like lightweighted injection tokens. So I would still recommend going with the injection token based definitions for your services, even if you only have one. It can be still beneficial.
Okay.
So it's a feature request.
Yeah, it's a feature request, yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think there is somebody from Angular here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. There is a question.
What happens if you don't destroy service instances at the end of the session? Like if you don't do all this, like destroying things, and you just you injected a service for like into a component, and then there are, let's say, 10 services in the whole app. What would happen if at the end of the session those will not be destroyed as you did it? Like as I recognize, you destroyed component instances or service instances.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you have a service which is not provided in a component, but provided in a modular in the root, which is usually the way how you do it, because if you are providing it the root by default, then it's like very tree shakeable and so on. So it has some benefits why to do it like that. And in that particular case, if you are not, for example, if you do something in your code which is creating some sort of observables, creating some sort of, actually not observables, but subscriptions, or any sort of other things that you shouldn't even do in a service, but you are doing it because that's what happened in the last 10 years since we are developing this application. Then it can happen that whenever you are starting another session or doing something else, you eventually create multiple of the subscription and it ends up in a memory leak. So that's usually the problem with non-destroyed or non-destroyed services, non-destroyed subscriptions.
What if you destroy subscriptions, like you destroy actually the subscriptions and do not destroy the service, let's say?
Yeah, so this session-aware lifecycle for services, this was actually important for us because of that reason, because we are not destroying the services. Because back in that day, we had like thousands of services in the module. And everything that you are providing in the module will never get destroyed because modules are sharing the same environment injector as all the others. So you're never gonna get destroyed services. So my solution for that, for the session-aware lifecycle, is to just basically initialize and terminate whenever you want to initialize and terminate, usually subscriptions, and clear the data whenever the session ends and so on, and initialize the data whenever the session starts. But we were still not destroying the services. In many cases, the actual solution now in our code is that all of these services have a component that is orchestrating the lifecycle of those services. So we are not using this hack anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
We have one.
Hello, Nico here. Thanks. How would this approach compare with the solution that Angular gives? I think that it's provide a factory where you could decide which kind of instance do you want.
So let's go there. So this one you mean? Not this one. This one. So actually, if you are not using constructor-based injection, but you are just using the inject keyword, then you can always call your service with the your service and parentheses, and then you don't have to put anything in the constructor, right? And then you can do the same thing. It's just you have to wrap it in that running injection context. So the solution is to not have services that still using the constructor-based injection. And then you have it. And then you can use this injection token generator without this crappy proxy module, which is just, but it was there because we still have a lot of constructor-based injection.
But in the past, there was also this option to pass the dependencies, right, to the factory itself.
Yes, it was actually always there. But I think the main use, so the main solution for it was really this, right? When you have a module defining all your providers and whatsoever, and that module has the static methods with configuration, and then on the configuration with environment, and based on the environment, you were actually able to provide the necessary service that you actually want to use. So that was the old solution. The new solution is to forget constructor-based injection and just call the new keyword on your service and then run it in injection context, and it just works out of the box.
Okay, thanks.
So anything I showed today is really not necessary. Like you shouldn't use any of this. I think they were just funny. For example, this create a proxy module in a factory function. This is just funny, right? But you shouldn't have a takeaway thought of after this instead of just doing that work in time and not postponing it forever. That's the takeaway story for today.
Any more questions? Maybe a small one? Half a question?
We are in time, right? Everything.
Good. Then let's call it the end of the presentation and the